My name is Emily, and until a year ago, I thought my parents loved me. Or at least, I thought they cared about me enough to treat me fairly. Looking back, I don't know if I was just naive or if I had been ignoring the signs my whole life. Because if I had been paying attention, I would have seen it. Jessica was always their favorite. She was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. The one whose happiness was more important than anyone else's. And I was the afterthought, the younger sister who was supposed to be understanding, to be okay with getting less, to be fine with being put second. And for a long time, I was. I grew up in Jessica's shadow. When she wanted something, she got it. I wasn't even jealous. I had learned early on that this was just the way things were. If I asked for something, I usually got a maybe, or we'll see. If she asked, it was an automatic yes. But I never thought they would take something that was mine. My college fund had been set up when I was young. I don't remember the details, just that my grandparents had left some money for my education, and my parents had always reassured me that when the time came, I wouldn't have to worry. It's not a fortune, my dad had told me when I was in high school, but it's enough to get you through. I had never questioned it, never thought to check how much was actually there, never worried about it at all. And then, one evening, everything changed. I remember that night so clearly. I was sitting at the dinner table, going over some last-minute paperwork for my college applications. My acceptance letters had already come in, and I was trying to decide which school to choose. It was an exciting kind of stress, the kind that felt like the beginning of something big. My parents were in the kitchen, talking in hushed voices. I wasn't paying attention at first, too focused on my laptop screen. But then I heard my sister's name. Jessica had gotten engaged a few months earlier, and the wedding planning had been in full swing. Every conversation in our house revolved around color schemes, catering, venues, and guest lists. It was exhausting. At first, I thought they were just talking about more wedding details, but something in my mom's tone made me stop typing. I wasn't sure why, but I had the sudden urge to listen. Completely covered, she was saying. The venue alone was nearly $25,000. My dad sighed. It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. I know, she said, and I want it to be perfect for her. She deserves the best. There was a pause. Then my dad's voice, quieter this time. You took care of the rest, right? My mom hesitated. It's done. What about Emily? My stomach twisted at the sound of my name. She'll be fine, my mom said, her voice light, almost dismissive. She can take out loans. I froze. For a second, I thought I had misheard. Loans? I turned in my seat, heart pounding as I stared at them. What are you talking about? They both looked up, surprised. I hadn't meant to say it so loudly, but the words had come out sharp, demanding. My mom gave me a small smile, like she was trying to reassure a child. Oh, sweetheart, don't worry about it. I pushed my chair back, standing up. Don't worry about what? My dad let out a heavy sigh. Emily, sit down. I didn't. Instead, I took a step closer, my mind racing. What did you mean when you said I could take out loans? My mom and dad exchanged a look, and I could tell they were deciding how much to tell me, how much they could get away with. I felt sick. Finally, my mom let out a small sigh, like this was a conversation she really didn't want to have. We had to move some things around, she said, to make sure everything was covered for the wedding. I stared at her. What things? I asked, even though I already knew. She hesitated again. Then, finally, in the same casual tone someone might use to tell you they had run out of milk, she said, we used your college fund. My ears started ringing. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. I looked at my dad, hoping, praying that he would say something, that he would tell me she was wrong. He didn't. Instead, he just sighed again, rubbing his temples like I was the one being difficult. Emily, don't overreact. Overreact. I let out a short, bitter laugh. You used my college fund for Jessica's wedding. And you think I'm overreacting? My mom frowned, looking genuinely confused. Well, yes. You can always take out loans, Emily. College isn't going anywhere. I gripped the edge of the table. That money was supposed to be for my education. And you'll still get an education, she said patiently, like I was a stubborn child. Plenty of people take out student loans. It's normal. I could feel my hands shaking. It was my money. It was family money, my dad corrected. And we had to make a choice. I shook my head, trying to process this. A choice? Between my future and a party? Emily, my mom sighed, exasperated now. It's not just a party. It's Jessica's wedding. It's one of the most important days of her life. We couldn't just give her a half-hearted celebration. I felt like I was going to throw up. All my life, I had known that Jessica was their favorite. But this was something else. This was them telling me, in no uncertain terms, that her one day mattered more than my entire future. I swallowed, trying to keep my voice steady. And you weren't even going to tell me? We were going to sit you down and explain, my dad said, like that made it better. We just hadn't gotten around to it yet. I clenched my jaw. Jessica chose that moment to walk into the kitchen, humming to herself. She stopped when she saw me, her eyes flicking between me and our parents. What's going on? I turned to look at her, and suddenly, the anger inside me had a direction. You knew, didn't you? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. Jessica blinked. Knew what? That they were using my college fund to pay for your wedding. She hesitated, just for a second. Then she shrugged. Mom and Dad said it was fine. They said you'd be okay. My whole body went cold. She didn't even care. I had always thought of Jessica as selfish, but I never thought she would be this selfish. You didn't even think to ask me? I whispered. Didn't think to see if I was okay with it? She frowned. Emily, why are you making such a big deal out of this? I laughed. I actually laughed. Because it is a big deal, I snapped. That money was for my future. And I gestured wildly, my voice rising, took it. Jessica rolled her eyes. Oh my God. Are you really going to throw a tantrum over this? I felt my heart shatter. I looked at my parents. And you're really okay with this? My mom gave me a small, condescending smile. Sweetheart, you'll understand when you're older. I stared at them, my chest rising and falling with uneven breaths. Then, without another word, I turned and walked out the door. I don't remember getting into my car. I don't remember turning the key in the ignition or backing out of the driveway. All I remember is the way my hands trembled on the steering wheel, the way my vision blurred as I tried to blink back the tears. I drove without thinking. My mind kept replaying the conversation over and over, each word slicing deeper. You'll understand when you're older. Why are you making such a big deal? It was family money. I pulled into an empty parking lot and just sat there. For the first time in my life, I felt truly alone. My parents had chosen Jessica. Again. But this time, they hadn't just favored her. They had taken from me. Taken something that was supposed to be mine, something I had counted on. And they hadn't even cared enough to tell me. I let my head fall against the steering wheel, my breath shaky. This wasn't just about the money. It was about what it meant. They didn't value me. They didn't care about my future. They didn't even see me as important enough to deserve a conversation before they made their decision. I don't know how long I sat there, but eventually, my phone buzzed. I wiped my face and looked at the screen. Jessica texted, "Are you seriously still mad? You're being dramatic." I stared at the message. Then slowly, I turned my phone off and set it down. I had a decision to make. I could go back home. I could cry. I could beg them to reconsider, though I knew it wouldn't change anything. Or I could accept the truth. I could stop expecting them to be different. I could stop waiting for them to see me the way I had always wanted them to. And I could walk away. It wasn't an easy decision. But in that moment, sitting alone in my car with the weight of betrayal pressing down on me, I made a choice. I was going to take care of myself. I didn't go back home that night. Instead, I went to a friend's house, someone who had always been there for me in ways my own family never had. She didn't ask too many questions, just let me crash on her couch and gave me a blanket. The next morning, I started looking for jobs. I wasn't going to college anymore, at least not right away. I had no money for it, and I sure as hell wasn't about to put myself in debt while my sister waltzed into a fairy tale wedding funded by what was supposed to be my future. So I worked. At first, it was just a basic job at a coffee shop. Early shifts, long hours, aching feet. But I wasn't just working for a paycheck. I was working with a purpose. Every spare moment, I was learning. I spent my nights researching, watching videos, taking notes. I stumbled into the world of online business, side hustles, passive income. And for the first time, I felt hopeful. I started a small business online. At first, it barely made anything, just a couple of dollars here and there. But I kept at it. While Jessica was off planning her wedding, I was building something real. By the time her wedding day arrived, I wasn't there. I wasn't invited. Not that I would have gone anyway. They never called to ask where I was, never sent a message to check in. It was like I had just stopped existing to them. And honestly, that was fine. Because while they were celebrating Jessica's big day, I was grinding. I was putting in the work. And by the end of that first year, I had done what I never thought possible. I had made $300,000. 1 year later, I was sitting in my apartment, my apartment, when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but something told me to answer. I pressed the button and lifted it to my ear. Hello. There was a pause. Then Emily. I knew that voice. It was my mother. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my legs. Wow. Didn't expect to hear from you. There was an awkward chuckle. Well, sweetheart, it's been a while. How have you been? I smiled to myself. Oh, just making a living. Another pause. That's good, she said quickly. That's really good. I waited. I could feel it coming. Well, she continued, her voice suddenly much softer. We were actually hoping we could talk to you about something. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, yes, she said, clearing her throat. You see, things have been a little difficult for us financially lately. There it was. I almost laughed. Oh, I said again, keeping my voice neutral. What happened? Well, she hesitated. We had to take out some loans for Jessica's wedding, and things haven't exactly been easy. Your father and I were just wondering if you might be able to help out a little. Just until we get back on. Just until you get back on your feet? I finished for her. My voice was calm, but inside, I felt a slow, burning amusement. There was a pause. Yes, she said, a little too quickly. Just a little help. As a family. Family. The word felt foreign coming from her. I leaned back in my chair, twirling a pin between my fingers. Just curious, I said, keeping my tone casual. But why me? Another pause. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head. Well, she finally said, we know you've been doing well for yourself. I let that sit between us for a moment. So they knew. They had ignored me for a year. No calls, no texts, not even a passing, how have you been? But now, suddenly, when they were struggling, they remembered I existed. I could picture it so clearly, Jessica whining about money, my parents wringing their hands, then someone saying, wait a minute, doesn't Emily have money now? I wanted to laugh. Instead, I tilted my head, my voice still light. I thought you said I could always take out loans? Silence. I waited. Then my mother let out a nervous chuckle. Oh, sweetheart, that was different. Was it? I asked, my voice sharp now. Well, yes, she said, as if it were obvious. You were young. You had time to figure things out. We just thought. No, I interrupted, my patience thinning. You didn't think. Not about me, anyway. There was a shift in her tone, a little more forceful now. Emily, don't be like this. We are still your parents. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us. I laughed. I actually laughed. Everything you've done for me? I repeated, incredulous. You stole my college fund. You didn't even tell me about it. I had to find out like an afterthought. You didn't care about how it would affect me. You didn't even bother to check on me after I left. And now that you need money, I'm suddenly your daughter again. That's not fair, she said sharply. Fair. I shot back. Fair would have been giving me a choice. Fair would have been at least acknowledging what you did instead of brushing it off. But you didn't, because you didn't care. And now you expect me to care about your problems? She scoffed, as if I was being ridiculous. Emily, we are your family. We took care of you for years, gave you a roof over your head. And now, when we need you, you're just going to turn your back on us. Ah, there it was. The guilt trip. Classic. I exhaled slowly. I don't owe you anything. The words came out quiet. Firm. Final. Excuse me, she said, her voice sharp with disbelief. I don't owe you anything, I repeated, my voice steady. You made your choice. You chose Jessica. You chose her wedding over my future. You told me to take out loans if I wanted to go to college. So, why don't you do the same? There was a sharp inhale on the other end of the line. Then a how dare you? Bingo. My mother's voice had lost all its fake sweetness. Now, she sounded like what she truly was, angry, entitled, desperate. After everything we've done for you, you're just going to let us struggle? I felt a smile tug at my lips. Yep. You ungrateful little, I hung up. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt free. But I should have expected what happened next. A week after that phone call, I was enjoying a quiet Saturday morning in my apartment, sipping coffee and scrolling through my phone, when I heard a knock at the door. At first, I thought it was a package delivery or maybe a neighbor. But when I checked the peephole, my stomach twisted. Standing outside were my parents. And behind them, arms crossed and looking annoyed, was Jessica. I took a deep breath, schooling my features into something neutral before unlocking the door and opening it just a crack. Emily, my mother said, her voice laced with false warmth. Sweetheart, we just wanted to talk. I raised an eyebrow. Really? Because last time we talked, you called me ungrateful and hung up on me. My father cleared his throat, shifting uncomfortably. We were upset, he muttered, avoiding my gaze. Jessica scoffed, arms still crossed. Yeah, well, you were being a total B. I shut the door in their faces. The knock came again. Harder this time. Emily, my mother snapped. Don't you dare. I opened the door again, leaning against the frame. If you're just here to insult me, you can turn right back around. My mother took a deep breath, forcing a tight-lipped smile. We're not here to fight. We just want to have a conversation. Face to face. Like a family. A family. Now they wanted to act like we were one. I folded my arms. Fine. Say what you need to say. They exchanged glances before my father spoke. Emily, we're struggling, he said, as if that wasn't already clear. Things have been tough, and, well, we could really use your help. I tilted my head. Huh, that's funny, because a year ago, when I was struggling, you told me I could just take out loans. Jessica groaned. Oh my God, are you still on about that? I smiled sweetly. You mean the part where my entire future was stolen from me so you could have a Pinterest wedding? Yeah, Jess. I am still on about that. Her face turned red. You're being ridiculous. You're rich now, aren't you? It's not like you even needed college. Why does it even matter anymore? I let out a low laugh. Wow, you really don't get it, do you? I shook my head, then turned to my parents. You know, I remember when I begged you not to touch my college fund. You shrugged and said I'd be fine. You told me I'd figure it out. My mother stiffened. Emily, that's not. I cut her off, mimicking her tone from that day. Loans exist for a reason. A little struggle builds character. You're young, you'll bounce back. Their faces dropped. I watched them squirm for a second before continuing, my voice dripping with mock concern. So why don't you take out loans? Why don't you build some character? Struggle a little. You're not too old to bounce back, right? Jessica's face twisted in rage. That's not fair. I smirked. Oh, so now you care about fairness? My father sighed heavily. Emily, we are your family. Families help each other. I let that sink in for a moment. Then, very calmly, I said, you weren't my family when you stole my future. You weren't my family when you didn't invite me to the wedding. You weren't my family when you ignored me for a year. You only remembered I was family when you needed money. Silence. Jessica clenched her fists. God, you're such a selfish brat. I shrugged. Maybe, but at least I can afford to be. That was it. That was the final straw. My mother's face twisted in rage, and my father muttered something under his breath, but I didn't care. I stepped back inside and, without another word, I shut the door in their faces. And this time, I didn't open it again. Another year passed. I didn't hear from them again. Not directly, at least. I'd get the occasional passive-aggressive text from distant relatives. Things like, family is forever, Emily, or you'll regret turning your back on the people who raised you. I ignored them, because while they were busy wallowing in self-pity, I was thriving. My business exploded. What started as a side hustle became a full-fledged empire. By the time I turned 23, I wasn't just comfortable, I was a millionaire. And my family? Oh, they were drowning. It wasn't just the debts. Jessica's marriage, the one they destroyed my future to fund, fell apart within a year. Turns out, the perfect wedding doesn't guarantee a perfect marriage. She moved back home, broke, bitter, and angry at the world. My parents were worse off than ever. My dad's job cut his hours. My mom's little side business never took off. And with the economy the way it was, they were struggling to keep the house. And still, I heard nothing from them. Until one day, I got a text. Mom texted, Emily, please call me. It's important. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then, out of pure curiosity, I called. She picked up on the first ring. Emily, she breathed, like she'd just been rescued from a shipwreck. Oh, sweetheart. I cut her off. What do you want? A pause. Then, the sob story started. How they were behind on the mortgage. How the bills were piling up. How the stress was tearing the family apart. And then, the real reason she called. Emily, she said, her voice trembling, we need your help. I smiled. Oh, what kind of help? She hesitated, like she was debating whether to say it outright or dance around it. Finally, she swallowed her pride. Financial help, she admitted. Just something to get us back on our feet. I almost laughed. The sheer audacity. I leaned back in my chair, twirling a pin between my fingers. So, let me get this straight, I said slowly. You stole my future. You forced me to struggle. You told me to just take out loans. And now, you want a handout. It's not like that, she said quickly. Emily, we're family. Oh, you mean like how I was family when you stole my college fund? Or when you didn't invite me to the wedding? Or when you ignored me for a year? Silence. I let it stretch for a moment before sighing dramatically. Well, Mom, I said, loans exist for a reason. Her breath hitched. A little struggle builds character, I continued. You're not too old to bounce back, right? She started crying. I let her. When she finally stammered out, I don't know what we're going to do. I just smiled and said, you'll figure it out. And then, I hung up. I haven't spoken to them since. As I sat there, staring at my phone screen, I couldn't help but wonder, was I being cruel? Let me know in the comments. Hey, I'm Emily, and this is how my life went from normal to completely upside down in a matter of months. I had been married to Rick for 7 years. On paper, we had it all, a nice home, a steady income, and what I thought was a pretty strong relationship. But in hindsight, there were signs, little things I ignored or chalked up to him just being busy. Turns out, I was blind to what was really happening behind my back. It all started around the time I hit a career milestone. I had been working as a marketing manager at a tech company, and I had worked my butt off to get where I was. But then Rick came to me with an idea. He said, I think it would be best for our marriage if you quit your job. We need more time together, and I need you here, with me. I was taken aback. He had always been supportive of my career. We had even talked about how we balanced both our jobs and our relationship. But now, it felt like he was suddenly pushing me to quit. He said that working all the time was starting to hurt our marriage. I mean, we had a nice life, but he wasn't wrong in saying that I was stressed and stretched thin. Still, it felt like an odd request. But he was so insistent. It's just temporary, he promised. We'll be happier if you focus on us. After a lot of back and forth, I gave in. I thought, maybe he was right. Maybe it was time to put our relationship first. So, I handed in my resignation and started focusing on being there for Rick, cooking dinner, planning weekend getaways, and being the wife he always wanted. I didn't even question it too much. I trusted him. But looking back, I should have seen the warning signs. What did I really give up? And why did he need me to be so available? Months passed, and the pressure of living in a constant state of togetherness started to weigh on me. Rick wasn't the same. He started getting distant, working late, being distracted, leaving his phone face down when I was around. I told myself it was just stress from work. But in my gut, I knew something wasn't right. And then one night, he dropped a bombshell. I'm in love with someone else, he said, sitting me down on the couch. The words hung in the air like a thick fog. I just stared at him, completely numb. My mind was racing, but I couldn't even process what was happening. What? I whispered. I'm sorry, Em, he said, voice shaking slightly. But it's true. I've been seeing someone else. She's younger. I've fallen for her, and I think it's time for us to go our separate ways. I couldn't speak. My chest felt tight, like the air had been sucked out of the room. All the sacrifices, all the effort I put into our life together, it meant nothing. He had checked out without even giving me a real chance. I don't know what to say. I finally choked out. And then he said something that felt like a knife to my heart. You should have focused on us. I didn't want to have to ask you to quit your job, but you never made time for me. This is your fault too, you know. And with that, he stood up, walked out the door, and left me with nothing but his words ringing in my ears. But what he didn't know was that he had just opened a door I hadn't seen coming. For the next few days, I felt like I was in a daze. I had just lost the man I thought I would spend the rest of my life with. And worse, I had sacrificed my career for a man who couldn't even be honest with me. But then it hit me. There was one thing I could do. I could make sure the other woman knew exactly what kind of man she was dealing with. So I did some digging. Her name was Sarah. She was in her mid-20s, and from what I could gather, she worked in marketing at a small firm downtown. Rick had told me she was just someone he met through work, but I knew better. I knew exactly who she was. I found her Instagram. It wasn't hard, and the photos they had posted together made me sick. There they were, smiling like a picture-perfect couple, not knowing the truth about the man they both loved. I needed to talk to her. I sent her a simple message, one that was calm but direct. Hi, Sarah. My name is Emily, and I'm Rick's wife. I'm sorry to do this, but I think you deserve to know that he's been married to me for 7 years. He's been lying to both of us, and I wanted to make sure you knew the truth. The reply came quickly. What? It was short, but I could hear the shock in her words. I know this is a lot, but I just wanted you to be aware of who you're involved with, I continued. Rick's been lying to you about his life, and I think you deserve to know. He's been cheating on me for months. I could hear her starting to freak out. You're telling me Rick's married? Why didn't he say anything? I sighed, not sure what to expect. I don't know, but I don't want you to waste any more time on a man who isn't being honest with you. The silence on the other end of the phone stretched on, and I could practically feel Sarah's brain working through everything I had just told her. I wasn't sure if she was angry, shocked, or just confused, maybe all three. But when she finally responded, her voice was shaky but determined. I need to talk to him. This isn't possible. I don't know what to say to you right now, but I appreciate you telling me. I can't believe he lied to me like this. I could tell she was trying to process everything, but I wasn't going to let her off the hook. Look, I get that this is a lot, but don't let him manipulate you like he did me. I thought I knew who he was too. I gave up my career, my independence, all for him. And he didn't even hesitate to throw me away. There was a brief pause before Sarah spoke again, this time in a firmer tone. I'll call him. He needs to explain this to me. I didn't waste any time. I knew I had done all I could to warn her, but the truth was he needed to face the consequences of his actions. The next part of the plan wasn't in my hands anymore. It was up to Sarah. I didn't hear from Sarah the rest of that day, but I was glued to my phone, half expecting a call or a message from Rick. The silence was deafening. He hadn't even tried to reach out to me. That was a red flag, wasn't it? I should have been angry, but I was strangely calm. Maybe I'd already gone numb from the shock. Maybe the years of living under his control had prepared me for this moment. The following morning, I got the call. It was Sarah. Emily, he's gone, she said, her voice a mix of disbelief and anger. I confronted him. He packed his things and left, said he couldn't deal with the lies anymore, that he was in love with me. And now he's gone. He's not coming back to either of us. I couldn't help but smile. It wasn't exactly the sweet revenge I imagined, but it felt damn good. You're better off without him, trust me, I said, my voice steady. I never thought he'd do this to me, Sarah admitted, sounding defeated. I can't believe I wasted so much time on him. I didn't know whether I should console her or just hang up and move on. I'd warned her, after all, but it didn't matter now. Rick had dug his own grave, but I wasn't done yet. Rick thought he could just leave me with nothing, no career, no income, no way of moving forward. He thought I'd fall apart, that I would beg him to come back. But instead, I made a decision right then and there. If he thought I'd be stuck at home, playing the role of the abandoned wife, he was wrong, dead wrong. I didn't rush into anything, no impulsive decisions, no hasty moves. I took a deep breath, and for the first time in months, I felt a sense of freedom I hadn't known in years. Rick had taken everything from me, but I was about to get it all back. I started by reaching out to my old company. The marketing job I had quit felt like a distant memory, but I had the skills, and I wasn't about to let Rick's selfishness define me. The next few days were a blur of emails, phone calls, and getting back into the professional world. It felt strange, exhilarating even, like I was building a new life from scratch. A few weeks passed, and life started to feel like it was moving forward. I was getting callbacks from companies, a few job offers here and there. My confidence was slowly coming back, and for the first time in what felt like ages, I started to feel like me again. I was making my own decisions, living my own life, and Rick was nothing but a distant memory. But, of course, the calm before the storm never lasts. It was a Thursday afternoon when I got the message from him. Rick. I saw his name pop up on my phone and immediately felt a wave of unease. It had been weeks since we'd last spoken. His absence had almost become normal, but the idea of him reaching out again felt like a punch to the gut. I didn't want to read it. I told myself I didn't need to, but curiosity got the best of me, and I opened the message. Emily, I've made a huge mistake. I need you to listen. I want us to try again. You were right about everything. Sarah and I, we're not going to work. She wasn't what I thought. I can't live without you. Please, let's fix this. Please. I stared at the message for a long time. The audacity. The nerve. I wasn't sure whether to laugh or scream. After everything he had put me through, he actually thought that after all this, I would just welcome him back with open arms? I didn't respond. Not right away. Instead, I let the message sit there, the words swirling in my head, until they stopped feeling like anything at all. But Rick wasn't done. A few hours later, I got another message. Then another. and another. He was practically begging, pleading for me to hear him out. I finally snapped. You think you can just come back after all of this? I typed, furious but calm. You ruined everything. You left me for someone else, and now you're trying to come back because she's not what you thought? Newsflash, Rick. You don't get to pick and choose when you want to be a part of my life. I didn't hold back. I poured out everything I had bottled up over the past few months, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the anger. And in the middle of that emotional storm, a thought struck me. What if he still doesn't understand what he's lost? What if he thinks he can walk away from me, go back to his little perfect life, and have everything work out for him? I decided then and there that he needed to understand just how far I'd come without him. But I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of knowing he still had any control over me. The next day, I was invited to an event with one of the companies I'd interviewed with. It was a high-profile networking event, an opportunity that could take my career to new heights. I wasn't sure if I was ready, but the invitation was too big to pass up. As I prepared for the evening, I found myself thinking more about Rick. The nerve of him. He didn't deserve a second chance. And so I decided to turn the tables. I called Sarah. The phone rang twice before she picked up. Her voice, still laced with confusion and hurt, greeted me. Emily, she asked, sounding surprised. What's going on? I need to tell you something, I said, my tone calm but deliberate. I know Rick's been contacting you, telling you how much he messed up, how he wants to come back to me. There was a pause. What? He told me he was done with you. He said you were the one who wasn't right for him. I laughed bitterly. Yeah, that's what he told me too. He thought he could just walk away, leaving me with nothing, and go back to you because you were younger. But here's the thing, Sarah. He messed up. He messed up so bad that he's now scrambling to fix everything. And I'm not going to let him think he can just come crawling back. What are you doing? Sarah asked, her voice tinged with both fear and curiosity. What's your plan? I smiled to myself. I'm going to show him what he really gave up. You see, Sarah, you've been used. And you've been hurt, just like I was. He's going to pay for what he did. But I need your help. Sarah didn't ask any more questions. She was on board. And that's when I started putting my plan into motion. I'd been doing some digging, of course. Nothing major, but I'd found a few things I could use, things that would help me build the perfect storm of consequences for Rick. He thought he could walk away and start fresh, playing the role of the victim, while I was left to pick up the pieces. But he had no idea how much I knew, or how much I had the power to unravel. It wasn't just about getting back at him, it was about showing him the true extent of his actions. I wanted him to understand that this wasn't just a minor inconvenience for him. No, he was going to lose everything. And he was going to realize that everything he had left, I'd helped him build. I already knew Rick's boss, Valerie, through some of the connections I had made during our time together. She'd always seemed like a strong, no-nonsense woman who didn't put up with crap. I had the perfect ammunition. You see, Valerie had been around when Rick first started working for her company. She knew how much he'd grown, how much his career had flourished because of the opportunities one had helped him seize. I had helped him build his image, helped him become that ideal employee. But that image was about to crumble, and I had just the right person to help me knock it down. I picked up the phone, dialed her number, and waited for her to pick up. When she did, I wasted no time. Hey, Valerie, I greeted her, keeping my tone light but purposeful. This is Emily, Rick's ex-wife. Emily, she said, sounding a little surprised. How are you? Well, I'm doing much better now. Thanks for asking, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. I was actually wondering if I could talk to you about something that happened a while ago. Something that might concern you, given the recent changes around Rick. There was a brief pause on the other end. I could almost hear her interest peaking. What are you talking about? I leaned in, a smile playing at the edge of my lips. I'm sure you've heard the rumors about Rick and his relationship with Sarah. But what you probably don't know is that it wasn't just a breakup. You see, Rick had been cheating on me for months before he left, and he was seeing Sarah while still with me. I think it's important that you know the kind of person you're dealing with. It's not just about what he did to me, it's about what he's been hiding. If you value integrity in your workplace, I think you should know the kind of man he is. And I'm not sure you want someone like him representing your company. The silence on the other end was deafening, and I could almost picture Valerie's face as she processed what I just said. Finally, she spoke again, her voice sharp and controlled. You're saying he was cheating on you while he was working here? I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Exactly. And I know you value loyalty and trust in your company. Do you really want someone like Rick working for you, knowing he's been hiding his personal life from you and your employees? She hesitated. I'll look into it. Thanks for bringing this to my attention, Emily. I'll let you know if I have any other questions. I hung up, feeling an immediate rush of satisfaction. That was the first part of my plan in motion. Over the next few days, things began to fall into place. It wasn't long before I heard from Sarah again. "He's gone," she said, her voice a mixture of disbelief and relief. "I don't know how you did it, but I guess Rick thought his new life with me was going to be perfect." But when Valerie found out, she fired him. She said she didn't want people like him in her company, and she made it clear that his dishonesty would not be tolerated. I let out a low laugh. "I told you, Sarah. Rick didn't just burn bridges with me, he burned them with everyone. He's going to find out the hard way that his actions have consequences." I didn't expect that," Sarah admitted, sounding both relieved and somewhat vindicated. "I honestly didn't think you'd be able to do all of this. But thank you. He had it coming." "Oh, trust me," I said, a grin creeping up on my face. "He's going to have a lot more to lose before this is over." And I wasn't kidding. Rick had thought he could walk away and get a fresh start, that I'd be stuck picking up the pieces of my shattered life. But what he hadn't counted on was me rising from the ashes. And what he definitely hadn't counted on was everyone finding out what a selfish, manipulative person he really was. The worst part for him? He still hadn't figured out the final move in my plan. The days after Rick lost his job felt almost surreal. I could already feel the momentum building, everything falling into place like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle that only I could see. I could hear it in his voice when he called me, still in shock, trying to reach out for some kind of pity from me. But I wasn't having any of it. "Emily, listen. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. You have to understand. It wasn't like I planned it," Rick pleaded over the phone, his voice a mix of desperation and guilt. "Save it," I snapped, cutting him off. "You think I'm going to feel bad for you? You think I'm going to go back to being the woman who always cleaned up your messes? I'm not that person anymore." I could hear him sigh on the other end, probably trying to find the right words to win me back. But nothing he said was going to change anything. He'd made his bed, and now he had to lie in it. The only thing left for me was to make sure everyone knew exactly who Rick was. It was time to pull the final card. I had a pretty good following on social media, nothing huge, but enough that I could make a statement if I wanted to. The world could see exactly what kind of man Rick really was. So I started gathering everything I could. I knew Rick had made a point of showing off his perfect life with Sarah on his Instagram. He had been bragging about how much better things were, how free he felt. He posted pictures of their dates, their vacations, all those moments meant to paint a picture of happiness. But what he didn't know was that I had kept copies of all the messages he'd sent me during our marriage. I kept the ones where he talked about his infidelity, those late-night texts to other women while telling me he was working late. I had everything. Screenshots of his conversations, photos of his lies, and even details about how he had tried to cover up his affair with Sarah, pretending it wasn't happening. I was going to expose it all. So, I spent the next few days crafting the perfect post. It wasn't just about telling my side of the story. No, I wanted to make sure the whole world saw Rick for the coward he really was. I started with a simple caption: "This is what happens when trust is broken. Let the world know who you really are, Rick." And then, I attached the screenshots. The messages, the photos, the proof that he'd been cheating on me with Sarah, while pretending to be the devoted husband. I tagged Rick in the post, made sure to include a few key hashtags, because if this was going to blow up, it needed to reach the right people. The moment I hit post, my heart raced. I knew this was it. This was the moment when Rick's life would spiral completely out of control. There was no coming back from this. It didn't take long for the post to blow up. The first comment came from an old friend of Rick's. "Is this real? I thought Rick was one of the good guys. What the hell?" Then more comments came flooding in. People who knew him, people I hadn't spoken to in years, joining the conversation. The messages were full of disbelief. Some of them, in a weird way, actually blamed me. "Why didn't you leave him sooner? You should have fought harder for him." But I didn't care. I was past caring about their opinions. They weren't the ones who'd been betrayed. The second wave came, though, and that's when it hit Rick hard. His friends, his supposed brothers from the gym, they started turning on him. The ones who had respected him, admired him for his family man image, those were the people who started commenting, asking why they hadn't known the truth. One by one, they backed out. The comments got uglier. "I can't believe you'd do this to Emily. You were family. You should be ashamed of yourself." I could almost hear Rick screaming at his phone as he read through them. But the real kicker came when Sarah saw the post. I'd expected her to defend him, to double down on the lies and pretend like everything was still fine. But I was wrong. She messaged me not long after the post went live. I had no idea, she wrote, her words full of regret. I thought he was honest with me. He told me he was done with you, that everything was over. I had no idea he was still lying to both of us. I'm so sorry. I almost laughed. She had been just as manipulated as I had. I could feel the irony in the air, thick and heavy. She had bought into Rick's lies, and now here she was, realizing she had been nothing more than a side act in his drama. I wasn't about to take the high road with her, though. You should have known, I replied, my fingers dancing across the keys. You're a grown woman, Sarah. You could have asked. You could have done better. But you didn't. I pressed send and immediately blocked her number. But the damage had already been done. The post had gone viral. It spread like wildfire, and in no time, Rick was being bombarded by texts, calls, and notifications. His friends started publicly distancing themselves. His family? They were silent at first, but I could feel the judgment growing. Then came the worst blow of all, his boss, Valerie. The very woman who had fired him after I exposed his infidelity to her. Valerie sent Rick a final email, no more warnings. She made it clear that she didn't tolerate people who couldn't be honest and loyal. He'd been caught in his lies, and now he was being cut loose from every avenue he had relied on to stay afloat. She had no room for someone like him in her company, and she made it clear that his unprofessional behavior would never be tolerated in her workplace again. Rick's fall from grace was swift. He couldn't hold on to his job anymore. His friends weren't calling. His family had turned their backs on him. His social media was flooded with people calling him out. He was a laughingstock, a man who had thought he could get away with everything, and now the world knew the truth. And me? I was finally free. I didn't need Rick's approval anymore. I didn't need anyone's validation. I was living my life for me now, building my own success. I didn't need to beg for attention or apologize for the things I had done. I had reclaimed my power, and I was going to keep moving forward, stronger than ever. But Rick? Well, he was now exactly where I wanted him to be, at rock bottom.